Good morning, everyone. So I just got back from a really nice workout this morning. I took a day off yesterday and it was nice to recharge. And tonight I'm premiering a video called The Watchers. Now, what's interesting about this video is I didn't really directly describe who are the Watchers. And the nine do this thing to me all the time where they won't explain why I can't do something because there's something I'm not seeing yet, and there are dots that are going to be connected later. So with my original Be a Dot video, I had recorded that like a year ago. It wasn't the webinar, it was just a download I got that morning. And then I recorded it and they wouldn't let me upload it to YouTube. They're like, you can't. I'm like, why? And then the concept of being a dot started like snowballing, and more information accumulated. And then one morning I woke up, they're like, that's your webinar. And after I released the webinar, that's when I released like the beginnings of Be a Dot. So they do stuff like that to me all the time. And I've learned to follow that internal GPS, because here's the thing. You can always know if the guides that you're working with are benevolent. How would you know if they're benevolent? Benevolent means they're good. They have your highest interest in mind. Based on how you feel, based on if you're becoming a better person or a worse person. I've encountered a lot of guides during my awakening that they weren't bad. I just want to be very clear, they weren't bad, but they might have been on one dimension where they couldn't really empathize with what it means to have a physical body. So sometimes they would keep me up all night, and I had to start setting boundaries because they didn't understand like my body needs sleep, because they don't have a body. So they had great information though. So every guide that you work with is going to have something to offer, even if it's a negative entity that attaches onto you. It's attached to you because obviously it was magnetically drawn to you, because maybe it has something to teach you and maybe you have something to teach it. So there's never a coincidence as to why you will have different energies attached onto your auric field. There's always a reason. And when you begin to see that reason, then you really start to get out of duality, because you don't really deem anything evil or angelic anymore. You've kind of logged out of the reality of duality, and you're able to see that everything plays a role and everything has a vibrational offering. Even if it's a lower vibrational entity, it has something to offer you. But we can only see that if we have our third eye open, and especially our heart open. So the third eye and the heart have to work in conjunction with each other, because if you have a closed third eye and a really open heart, well, a lot of people in life are going to take advantage of you because you keep saying yes to everyone, and your discernment isn't being sharpened. But then if you have a closed heart and an open third eye, a lot of the downloads that you receive might inflame your ego, or you might let that information, even though that information is true, it's so potent that it might make you lose your foothold. You might lose your footing to this reality. So when I was quote unquote bipolar, which I'm not bipolar, it was just a misdiagnosis, the doctors might disagree because, again, at the time I was out of control, but I was having psychosis. And when you're in a manic episode, your DNA is fully activated. But the problem is, because you get taken up, it's like a kite, like you fly up to the ethers, you lose your connection to Earth. So I couldn't stop talking. I was spending money carelessly. I would go to hotels and buy everyone drinks. That's what happens when you're manic. There's different types of bipolar. There's when you're depressive. For me, it wasn't that at all. It was more of a Charlie Sheen thing where I became really hyperactive, but I was really tapped in. Like, I'd be at coffee shops and I'd turn around and be like, "Are you a writer?" They're like, "How the hell did you know that?" Because I was completely tapped in. I can even say I was more tapped in than now. Even though that isn't the truth, it is true from one viewpoint, because I had no inhibitions. Does that make sense? I was uninhibited. So I didn't have to think about the download I'm receiving. It just was, and it was always accurate. But I also drained people around me because I wouldn't shut up and because I was depleting everyone else's energy by thinking that I was Jesus or Superman or Clark Kent, all of these things. Like, why did I even bring this up? Because it's important for us to be anchored into this physical realm. So there will be guides that you work with that have no connection to the earth. They have amazing information. They're not necessarily above you. They're just operating from a different dimension as you. And you get to decide who you want to collaborate with. The reason why I primarily work with the 9 is because they understand. They have a 360-degree range of awareness as it relates to the physical realm, the oversoul. They are my oversoul. But my point is, they have a broad view of everything and how it all weaves into the tapestry of consciousness. That's why I work with them. When I first awakened, Michael was my main guide. And because I was bullied a lot in my life. So Michael taught me how to slay those demons, meaning how to stand up for myself. How when a dark entity would try to knock me off my stool through a host, through an empty seat, or through someone that's unconscious, he would have me stand up and look at the entity directly in the eye. He taught me all of that. And then once I really fortified myself from within, Michael left. He never left me. Again, like from a linear standpoint, we see things as like my guide left me, or I used to be able to do this and now I can't do this anymore. That's true if you're presenting it in a linear fashion, but in a quantum universe, your guides are always with you. It's just that you may require different training through different guides at different times. Does that make sense to you guys? So like Raphael has always been the main guide that I work with when it comes to healing myself. I've always struggled with being compulsive. So because I'm a Virgo, so I like to be nitpicky. I'm very meticulous. So when I put my nose to the grindstone and I really apply myself, I will master whatever it is that I put my mind to. I've always been like that. When I was a singer, I would spend countless hours in the night with a little Olympus digital recorder, and I would listen to really amazing gospel singers like Kim Burrell, the ones that had lethal runs. For those of you who don't know what a run is, it's your vocal acrobatics. You can do gymnastics, you can do riffs. So I would spend all hours of the night recording Kim Burrell or Brandy or whoever it is that was really adept at doing runs. And then the voice recorder had an ability to slow it down, and I would train my ear to then replicate the riff. And once I got the notes down, I would speed up my riff. That's how I became really good at doing riffs. I was like on fire when it came to riffs. I even tease my friends now. I have friends that are ministers and pastors, and I'll send them riffs sometimes and they're like, you're killing me right now. And I think whenever you invest a lot of time, you pour a lot of energy in something for 5, 7, 10 years, that skill set will never leave you. Obviously, it's going to get a little rusty, but because you've really trained yourself, it'll always be with you. It's like someone who takes time off the gym because they have muscle memory. We call them Z lines. Even if they take a year off and they go back, that muscle will come back. Okay. So I know I'm going a little all over this place in this video, but I jumped on with the intention to be very fluid with this video. So our abilities never leave us. What else was I saying? I was saying with the riffs, so as a Virgo, I will go in and I want to study everything. And what's interesting now is I understand how when I used to train my ear as a singer, that lent itself to me being clairaudient now. because I had to get in tune with the subtleties. I had to tune my ear. So whenever you tell yourself, oh, I wasted 5 years doing this, or I played video games for 10 years and what a waste of my life, or I was at this job that I hated and I can't believe it wasn't until 50 years old that I found my calling. Just know that everything you've done contributed to where you are now. Never ever doubt that, because it really does. I can confidently say that I'm a great singer. I have chops. But my guidance told me, you need to let this go. You need to let this go. They told me this in 2000, I believe it was 2008. And then I had to go through a 3-year grieving process. I cried days on end, cried nonstop. It was like losing someone that I loved. And I had to really grieve it. It took 3 years to collapse that timeline. And again, that timeline's never collapsed. Like, my guides have already said to me, it's very possible that in another lifetime, you'll come back and reopen that time capsule or reopen that memory. And then you'll be an amazing singer because you'll also bring all your spiritual expertise to it. But looking back on my life, I can now see that all the times that I spent in studio, traveling to New York, traveling to Jersey, traveling to Philly, I worked with Usher's producers, I worked with big names. I can honestly say that I was never really in the experience. I was so talented as physically, meaning with my vocal cords, but every time I was in studio, I always felt like I was above, like floating above the situation, trying to understand, why is all of this happening? What's the significance of this? And it wasn't until I awakened that I saw, wow, it's like a 2020 hindsight, like, oh, my entire life I was an observer. I just wasn't aware of the fact that I was an observer. Does that make sense? I wasn't aware of the fact that I was an observer, but I was an observer. Hold on, I just want to make sure it's still recording. Okay, cool. And you guys, because I heard a little ding, and I live in a building that's quite loud, so my apologies for that. That's going to be changing. So I wasn't aware that I was the observer of my reality at the time, but I was doing it, I guess you could say, unconsciously, maybe because I was genetically coded, as many of you are, to be starseeds. So the starseeds have always had this intrinsic ability to see things that other people can't see, to hear things that other people can't hear. Because in many regards, we've come from an advanced civilization. We are time travelers. So there are things that we can understand, and I don't mean that in a derogatory fashion, but there are things that we understand because we come from a different angle. All right? So that doesn't make us better than other humans who might live in a more like direct way, like, I'm going to live within the box of conformity. They're still collecting data as well. We just happen to collect data from a different angle. So when I awakened, I saw, oh my God, I think I was always an observer. I remember being in studio and being in these situations where I would always look at my life from the top down and be like, what's the point of all of this? I would always question everything. So I've always been like an existentialist. But obviously when I had my Kundalini awakening, the volume got cranked up and I became aware of the fact that I'm aware. But starseeds are usually, they feel like they don't belong. I never felt like I belonged. I would go to the clubs with my friends and I always felt like I was different than the rest. Like people were able to have fun and let loose. And I was always like, I know there's something more to life. I know it. This can't be it. Yeah. So anyways, what I wanted to share is that the Watchers, who are they? The answer is they're all of us. They're all of the higher aspects of a consciousness that's not able to see, of a horse that has blinders. So we all have higher aspects in the angelic realm. We all have higher aspects in the Pleiades, in Orion, in Arcturus, in Sirius, in Cassiopeia, in Andromeda. We also have aspects in the underworlds. We have aspects in more of, you could say, the demonic realms. We all do. So whenever you're trying to control situations, that's your reptilian brain coming online. And that's an aspect of you that's on a lower tier of consciousness. And then your job is to instruct it and to inform it as to how it can come out of that hellacious space, of that underworld. But all of us are still learning. No one is exempt from learning, okay? So, whenever we do something that's unconscious. I did a big boo-boo 2 days ago. Big boo-boo. I told a friend, I dragged another friend's name into a conversation, not in a gossipy way, but I shared a secret of theirs that I shouldn't have shared, even though my friend that I was talking to didn't know this person. I couldn't sleep all night because I'm so in tune with my light body, I'm so in tune with my angels, with my higher self, that I knew I had to rectify that. So yesterday I called my friend. I'm like, hey, just by the way, I made a little bit of a boo-boo yesterday and I might have dragged your name in a conversation and I apologize. And my friend was like, don't worry about it. It's all good. But I constantly make mistakes too, which is why I love the guidance from the 9 ETs. My life is a dot, 9 extraterrestrials, and a lot of magic. That's what it is. It's 1 dot, 9 ETs, and a lot of magic. So the watchers that night where I was tossing and turning, that was the higher aspect of myself that was watching me and saying, hey, you're going to have to correct yourself and make it right. You made a mistake. It was a mishap, but you need to rectify this. Now, because I'm in tune with my higher self, I knew I would come clean. A lot of people don't know what they're doing that is hurting them karmically. So there are always watchers watching them. The universe has eyes. The universe is always watching you. All right? Now, who are the watchers? Again, they're that higher aspect of yourself. They could be your galactic committee that's watching over you, that wants to make sure that you remain on course with your mission. And whenever you feel discombobulated, whenever you feel off kilter, whenever you feel like things aren't going your way, there is usually an eye on you that is trying to get your attention so that you too can see, so that you too can remove the veil, so that you can start to see things that were hidden from you. So the watchers are all of us. They're all the higher aspects of who we are. So I'll give you another example that's just hitting me now. The 9 are on fire today. Yesterday I posted a quote how like some people want me to die, and I receive messages all the time that are of a threatening nature, and this is something I've grown accustomed to. So when I shared that on Instagram and on YouTube with you guys, I love you guys, with my community, if someone said, Phil sounds like a victim right now, that would be true from their perception in that moment. So I wouldn't debate with that. If someone said, oh, he's just sharing what's going on, he's probably been through this 1,000 times and he just wants to share a message to embellish the fact that we need to become one again, that we all need to vibrate in unison with each other, and we need to drop the judgment, because judgment is a virus that is infecting everyone. Okay? So if someone said, no, he's not playing the victim, he's just sharing what's on his heart without being defined by what happened to him, that would be true as well. So what the 9 are always teaching me is everything is true. So if someone said you're just playing the victim right now, I would only disagree from the vantage point that I wasn't playing the victim, meaning my intention when sharing that people are threatening me was not to play the victim, because I feel like I've overcome victimhood, and everything I share and everything that happens to me is a wonderful opportunity to educate other people and give perspective that might broaden their mind. I never share it to awaken the person who hurt me or who said something that was uncalled for, because I already understand that they're not going to get it. If they're coming from such a place of judgment and lack and ego and evil, to be honest, well, I would be a fool to try to share the message to awaken them. Does that make sense to you guys? I would be a fool. So when I think about your life, you go on a trip, you gather wisdom, you accumulate new experiences, and then you share it with people. Maybe there's something wonderful that you extracted from that trip, and you're utilizing that opportunity or that experience to share with your peers, to share with your family, to share with your friends, and in sharing that, they might have a light bulb moment. So that's kind of where I come from with everything I share. I don't ever, my intention is never to play the victim, so just know that. But I also wouldn't fight someone or argue with someone that said, oh, that post sounded like victimhood, because from their vantage point, that's true. It could come across that way. But the watchers are the ones that will watch you to see, can you also include the perspective that Phil was just sharing it to help his followers, to help the people who are following his Instagram page. So let's say that you come from that place of he's only sharing it as a victim. The watchers are watching your blind spot. They're also watching you. Who are the watchers? They're that higher aspect of you that want you to incorporate every perspective. Does that make sense? So to say he's just coming from victimhood would be limiting. That would be a limited perspective. Okay, it would be like trying to close someone in based on your limited perception. So the idea is to always enlarge in your picture of reality and go, okay, cool. Phil shared this. It could be that he's hurt right now and he's coming from the victim. Could it also be true that he's sharing it because it might help people who need to hear this? And then someone who hears it and has a comment might help Phil in return, because we're all one. We're all part of a collective. So we're all swapping information, if you think about it. We're like a big network of light, and we're all exchanging information through this network. Okay? So whenever I wouldn't be able to do this video right now unless you were watching. I would be, but I'm also picking up on frequencies coming from you as I share this stuff and receive new downloads. So from that vantage point, we're all a network. So the watchers are all of us. They're the aspect of yourself that knows you have a blind spot, and that energy is always available to you if you broaden your perspective. Always available to you if you broaden your perspective. If I see that a friend of mine is making really poor choices, and I don't mean that in a judgmental way, so just know that. You can objectively look at someone, it's what I do as a reader, look at someone and see them as a universal being of love and light, but also see that there's stuff around them, like there's like a dark fog, and there's decisions they might have been making that are not actually in line with their divine blueprint, and it's caused them to be misaligned. So what I mean by, you can look at one of your friends and say, okay, I feel from an objective standpoint, meaning judgment aside, that they're making choices that aren't allowing them to vibrate into that higher stance. They're making choices that are not enabling them to vibrate into that higher stance. Okay, that's an objective read. It's a read. We're spilling the tea. That's an objective read. The part of me that knows I can't interfere, all right, you guys follow me? The part of me that has made enough mistakes in my life where I did interject my advice, where I did give my 2 cents, and it backfired, the part of me that's wiser now knows I can't interfere. because I'm in tune with my higher self. My guides will let me know if there's something I need to share. The part of me that knows he can't interfere will still watch what's going on. Now, I believe that my higher self that knows what's going on with them is also connected to their higher self. Which is why when I do readings, your guides give me messages that you may not have received from your guides. Okay? Your guides will send me messages that you may not have heard from your guides. If someone doesn't have clairaudience, if they're not clairvoyant, they will hire a reader because they're not able to access their Akash. So the same goes for this scenario. If I know something about someone, the watchers aren't only me, because we're all one. If you were to take duality out of the entire equation, and we are all one being, the watchers are my higher aspect, your higher aspect, meaning your higher self, but also your entire angelic team that's watching you going, hey, it's like a traffic controller. You know those people that control, come on, you're going the wrong direction. You need to make a U-turn. So the watchers are always around. There was a being watching me that night that I made my little boo-boo. But because I was in tune with that being, then I knew to call my friend the next day and rectify my behavior. I knew to do that. It's doing the right thing. You're coming from integrity. You live a pure life. You live a clean life. So, does that make sense, you guys? And I can give you 1,000 examples, but I think this pretty much sums it up. I'm trying to think of if I can think of another example right now. Well, all right, let's say you're in traffic and everything is really slow and you're getting really impatient and you can't stand it and you find yourself getting fidgety. You're like, ugh, and you're starting to get aggravated. Well, in that moment, you're being watched. You're being watched. Your higher self is watching you. It's hoping that you're going to look up and be like, oh, I'm aggravated. There's a lesson here. Most people who are asleep won't hear that. They have no clue. They steal and they think they can get away with it. They deceive people and they think they can get away with it. They hurt someone and they think they can't hold themselves accountable. Everything in life has to be accounted for. Everything. Everything. Everything has to be accounted for. So, you get aggravated in traffic. If you look up, and that's just a metaphor because it's inside, you're looking within. You're looking within to tap into the higher frequency. And you can call it your angel, you can call it your guides, you can call it your higher self. There are differences between those two or three, but it's not really important as long as the information is spilling forward. So as long as you're getting flooded with the information that makes you a better person, it doesn't really matter. My guide just didn't present for a while. And then Michael came through, and then Raphael came through, and then Merlin came through. And they all have different specializations. Merlin teaches me magic. He teaches me how to move, shift the grids. So when I meditate, I will shift the grids to benefit the collective. If there's something that's out of alignment, the grids are like a person. They're like a giant, and I will make adjustments. Merlin teaches me how to work with my imagination to unlock consciousness. When I work with dragons, it activates a DNA strand that was once inactive. When I work with fairies, it activates a DNA strand. When I shapeshift into a snake or into a winged snake or into an angel that's walking on water, I'm activating a dormant DNA strand. Merlin taught me all these things. He teaches me how to open portals. He teaches me how to find chakras in my feet, in my hands, how to move energy, how to bend reality, how to slow down time. Every guide offers something different. Are they you? From one perspective, you could say that, yes, they are you, because they're a higher aspect of all that is, and we are all that is. We are all the one. But from a different viewpoint, you could say that they have their own unique vibrational signature. All right? And you're kind of concocting your own thing through all of that guidance to become your own master. And then the 9 teach me how to see all these different perspectives, how to make sure that it's realistic, that it's non-judgmental, that it's inclusive, and also is very stellar. It's very celestial. It's both. So they cover all grounds. They show me, they're kind of like my watchers. You get it? They're my watchers. They show me, all right, Phil, there's this perspective you're missing out on here. And if you share this, there's going to be a leak in what you share. So I hope that helps you guys. Who are the watchers? They are you. They are me. They're all of us. They're other beings. They're Pleiadians. They're angelics. They're extra dimensionals. They're all of us. So thanks everyone for watching. I'm glad that I just decided to jump on off the cuff and make this video. And I'm sending you infinite love, blessings, sprinkled with light codes. And please subscribe if you haven't. And thank you for your support. I love you guys so much.